Hello, listeners. I need to apologize. I really want to publish an episode every other week, but I have two issues. First, I have a couple of autoimmune diseases and I have very limited energy. I have to prioritize being a mom over my podcast, so sometimes I'm just not able to get it done. Second, I'm making the podcast for my local community, which is 56% Hispanic, so I started making a Spanish version. If you're bilingual and want to listen to that, it's called Lulu y Mimi, Consejos para preparar a sus hijos para la escuela. Anyway, I'll do my best to get my English episodes out on time, but I might not be as consistent as I would like. But to make it up to you today, I'm going to release 2 bonus episodes about dyslexia. I say they're bonus episodes because I'm trying to keep this season focused on activities for preschoolers. I split the conversation into 2 parts for those listeners who are short on time. I'm trying to keep them to about 10 minutes. Anyway, I hope you enjoy them and that you share them with anyone who might need to hear more about how to help a struggling reader. Hello, I'm your host, Miriam Brown. In addition to my teaching certificate, I have a bachelor's degree in psychology and a master's in curriculum and instruction. I spent the last decade as a public school teacher, and I want to give you insider tips on how to help your child do well in a system that might otherwise fail them. Today, I want to introduce my good friend, Aubrey Merrick, who has some firsthand experience with reading difficulties. Hi, this is Miriam Brown
and Aubrey Merrick,
and we're here to talk today a little bit about reading disorders, one of which is dyslexia. Aubrey, do you want to tell us a little bit about how reading disorders have affected your family?
Yeah, so my dad struggled with reading his whole life. He has never been officially diagnosed with dyslexia, but he can't really read. So growing up, even as kids, if we were watching a movie and there was subtitles, we would read it for him. But I think also in knowing that, I also saw some of the struggles in myself and worked through it throughout school. I was also never officially diagnosed with dyslexia, but I was always a slower reader in my class. I never really loved reading because it was always a struggle. And even to this day, I hate reading out loud because of these struggles.
Do you think you could pinpoint why reading was a struggle? Can you think about what made it so hard?
I think a lot of it, for me, I do notice like I'll switch letters in my brain. So I have to take longer to make sure that I'm recognizing letters. And then also with that struggle, I never wanted to appear that I was struggling. So then it made me nervous. So it also made me, I think, slower. And so I was never, ever very comfortable just because I didn't see words like other kids saw words.
So it's almost like the anxiety produced by learning how to read continues on even after you've mastered the skill.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Even still to this day, if I have to read in a public setting, my heart is racing. It's still a struggle. And I'm a good reader now, and no one would be able to tell that I struggled through it, but my nerves make me stumble.
Do you see kids nowadays struggling with some of the same issues?
So me personally, I have a son who is in 2nd grade, and I started to notice early on that he would write his letters and numbers backwards. And all his teachers told me, it's normal, they do that. And every grade I've brought it up like, do you think he could be dyslexic? And they've told me, no, it's normal, he'll get past it. But then as he's started to read, I know he's struggling. I help in his class, and I know he's close to the bottom in his class in terms of being able to read. He's very, very smart. His vocabulary testing scores are off the charts. He's got tons of common sense, but when it comes to reading, he really struggles. And his teachers haven't really mentioned it much. They always tell me he's doing good or fine. He's doing okay. But when I go in the class, it seems to me like they're kind of just limping him along.
I think the biggest thing that frustrates me about that is that dyslexia can be treated better the earlier you catch it. But it seems like schools do the opposite. They just put it off and say, oh, they'll catch up. It's fine. It's normal. Rather than looking into the problem, they seem to just kind of procrastinate doing anything about it until it's almost too late.
Yeah, I agree with that. I, like I said, have brought it up at every parent-teacher conference. And like his 1st grade teacher told me, I'll pay closer attention. And she kind of started maybe realizing that maybe there was something there, but nothing came of it. And then the principal actually reached out to me and she had told me, we're doing dyslexia trainings and we're starting to figure out how we can find this in kids. And she actually told me, we can't diagnose it. It has to be done with a brain scan. And that was kind of the end of the road for that. And then he got into second grade and I brought it up early to his teacher, and she's an amazing teacher. She's really, really good with them. And she said, I can't tell you for sure. I don't know enough about it, but she was like, I'll pay attention. I'll have our principal reach out to you, which was a different principal this year. And then I never have heard anything. And so I'm kind of frustrated, not because I think they don't care, but I think they don't know how to address the issue.
Which seems a little funny. If schools are to do anything, you would think it would be to help kids learn how to read. And the brain scan thing, you hear a lot. Schools are really afraid of having to pay for things because they're already short on money. And there's a myth out there that schools can't diagnose dyslexia, that it's a medical issue. But I'm married to a family physician, and we've looked through every single article, and the family physician articles will tell them this isn't a medical issue. You have to go to your school, and your school's supposed to diagnose it. But if you have the school telling you to go to the doctor and the doctor telling you to go to the school, you're kind of caught in a trap. So my husband and I did a bunch of research, and what we finally figured out is that you have to go to the speech pathologist. If your school isn't willing to or doesn't have the capacity to diagnose dyslexia, then your family doctor can write a referral to a speech pathologist. And
yeah, I agree with that. Luckily, Miriam referred me to a speech pathologist in town, and he actually works in the schools. We got on his wait list, so hopefully within the next month, we're able to see him.
I remember having a conversation with you, and you talked about that your son knows his letters. It's just he has a hard time putting them together to form words, because I'm sure you taught him the alphabet.
So when he would read a word, he knows the letters and he knows the sound, so he can sound out each individual letter. But then when it comes to blending them together, it all gets lost. And this has been a big frustration in our house. And that's where I don't know how to help him. I don't know how to get him to blend it. I've tried having him put two letters together and then blend them together. And as a parent, that's what's been the most frustrating about this is I see he's struggling and I don't have the tools to help him.
Yeah, because it's not like you got any training in what to do, and you're actually going about it the right way. You've taught him the letters, you've taught him the sounds, you've taught him all the phonics, but how do you make that next step of blending the words together? When you talk about that, then it sort of makes sense why you would have a speech pathologist dealing with this. But before that, I mean, who would guess it would be the speech pathologist?
Well, and that's a thing. I'm thankful for Miriam because I would have never thought that. He says his letters and words right. So to me, he doesn't need speech therapy or anything like that. When he was younger, he said his letters wrong for a long time until he was 5. Like his C's were T's, and they were kind of concerned about it, but not enough to ever do speech therapy. So I don't know if that's an early indication of this or...
Yeah, I think that actually there is some correlation between speech difficulties and dyslexia. So on a side note, I talked to our local speech language pathologist after I had this interview with Aubrey, and he said that people who have a central auditory processing disorder, meaning their brain has a difficult time distinguishing the sounds in speech. People who have CAPD, the large majority of them go on to develop some sort of learning disorder at school. They think that upwards of 80% of the kids who are diagnosed with dyslexia may have an underlying central auditory processing disorder, which makes sense because if you can't actually hear the sounds, how are you going to be able to say the sounds correctly, much less pair the sound to the letter, to the word, to be able to read it correctly? I think even if you were to get a diagnosis from the school, I don't think that they have any treatment options available for it.
I do know he gets pulled from class and he works with a reading interventionist. And as far as I know, he's coming along. He's getting better. But I would say, like, at the point he's reading now, his classmates were there at the end of last year. Like, he's almost a full year behind. I'm not a teacher, so I don't know what the standards are. But to me, I don't want my kid just being limped along. I want him to feel like he's doing good. And I don't think he feels like that. And the problem is, I really truly feel it's not that the school doesn't care. It's that they don't know how to help him.
Well, and I think the fact that he is doing well probably is a testament to the work you have done and to the work that the reading interventionist and the teachers have done. It's just that some kids need a ton of work. But the problem is, I think what I hear you saying is that you don't want it to affect his self-esteem. You don't want him to feel like he's behind or he's not smart, and you don't want him to have the kind of anxiety that you have around reading.
Well, I think even as a kid, I remember doing the speed reading test. You go out in the hall and you read with someone and you see how far you can get. And then all of us kids would come back in class and kids would be like, well, I got to line 34. And I'm like, well, I only got to line 15. And there was so much based on that in school. If you couldn't get so far, you're not very smart. And I think they're better about that now, but I remember being self-conscious about that, and I don't want that for him.
So the fact that is in reading intervention already tells me a couple of things. The school has figured out that there is a problem. They're probably not calling it dyslexia. They might be calling it a specific learning disorder. And they are doing everything in their power to help with it, because otherwise they wouldn't be pulling him out to talk to the reading specialist. The problem is that, according to Aubrey, while he is making progress, he's not catching up, and that's causing some distress. So I don't think she's wrong for seeking other ways to get the problem solved, because she feels like her son needs more treatment than the school is able to give. So I think it's actually a really good idea for her to go outside the school system to find out ways she can help him.
Yeah, I agree with that. I have been very thankful to communicate with Miriam about this, because I feel like my answer was the school, and the school didn't have an answer for me. And Miriam finally said to me, if you want to help him, you have to go outside the school. And that was kind of a light bulb moment for me, because in my head, I'm thinking, this is what the school is for. So if they can't help me, who's going to be able to help me? And that's not always the case. And of course it's not. These teachers are stretched so thin. So it's okay if the school can't help you, and it's okay if you have to go outside the school to find your child some help. And I think it's also okay if your child is struggling with this. It's nobody's fault. It's a struggle in society standards now, but it doesn't have to be a struggle their entire life.
And I think also, as a parent, we all want our kid to be the best, the smartest. And I think it's important that we realize that it's okay to just work with them where they're at. We have to find a way to help our kids be okay with where they're at and still keep moving forward. This is the end of part 1 of our dyslexia bonus episode, and part 2 is available right now, so go ahead and binge.